You are now watching Phil Times TV. So I go by February Bank. They call me Feb, Febby, Big Feb. But the name February Bank is less than 2 years old. It's about 1.5 years old. You know, every time I get interviewed, the story doesn't change, but it goes really, really far back. And to highlight specific points like growing up was, obviously I gotta give credit to my parents. Just the car rides. Cars had cassette tapes, so they would have mixtapes of a lot of old school soul and R&B and Tagalog songs. So that was my first taste of kind of like understanding what music sounded like and like to get into a groove and wanting to sing along. And then also inside of the house, like I grew up with, you know, a dad that had a record player. So going through records and seeing Stevie Wonder and Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, you know, like that's kind of the music I heard as a young child. And then also growing up in a very diverse area in Northern California, I'm from San Jose, California, the radio stations had a lot of good music. So it was a combination of what my parents were playing, stuff on the radio, records in the house. And then when it went to TV, this is like the whole era of music video shows, right? MTV, VH1, BET. So watching music videos, radio, what my parents would play, that like brought music into my world. Then as I started to grow up, I was singing a lot to like R&B songs, R&B ballads. And it was funny because in elementary school, like girls, and this is like before cell phones, but the only way that you can call someone and leave a message was to call somebody's landline, right, on their answering machine. So girls would be like, "Hey, Chris, can you call my parents, our house number?" And when the answering machine plays and you hear that beep, you know, like leave a message after the beep, beep. Can you sing? So I used to sing to girls on their home voicemails just so they would have it recorded and they can play it back. So obviously that made me feel good as a person that was trying to sing, because if girls wanted you to sing, you must sound kind of good, right? So I went with that. From there came me wanting to record music video shows and stuff on the radio. And for those that come from the cassette era, you could put like pieces of paper on top of the cassette because there was 2 holes, and you can record stuff straight onto that cassette. So the reason why I would record is because that's when I did the play, stop, rewind, play, stop, rewind, because I wanted to like learn the lyrics. So, you know, we didn't have the internet back there, and so I would just listen to songs, write it on a piece of paper, and that's how I started to memorize these songs, because I would recite it to myself in front of the mirror, in the shower, and so it goes from there. Also, I was blessed enough to like, you know, do talent shows and would do well there. I did musicals growing up, and then being a professional athlete, like I was always used to having the spotlight on me. Everything was kind of like this stage where I can show my skills and entertain. When high school came along, that's when I started to get a little bit more serious. So I did like concert choir, so I was singing in the choir. Also, I created like a singing group, you know, coming from an era where there was a lot of R&B groups and boy bands. So I started a singing group. It was called On 3, and sang like a lot of soul and R&B songs. And then so from there, I'm talking about all of this stuff that built up to high school, but from there, I fell out of love. Not out of love, but I just wasn't serious about it because I wanted to focus on sports. Right? So sports, being a professional athlete was really my #1 dream job growing up. I wanted to play either American football or basketball. So when I started to focus more on sports, I didn't really do anything on the music side. I collected CDs though, you know, like I collected cassettes and then also CDs. We all know like the era Case Logics. I used to have folders of hip hop and rap and R&B. And the reason why I got into rap really was because growing up, like my uncle, he had like a lowrider car. He had a sound system, so like the bass was booming in the back, and was playing a lot of, coming from the West Coast, like West Coast gangster rap. So that's how I got tapped into like NWA, Ice Cube, Snoop Doggy Dogg, coming from the Bay, E40 and Too Short. Getting to know that side, like hip hop and that culture, the way they were speaking, the things that they were talking about, the way that they were dressing. I fell in love with like the rawness and the uniqueness, and also the party side of hip hop. So got that hip hop influence from, you know, being around a lot of older people who fixed up their cars and had sound systems. Like that's how I got into hip hop. So yeah, going back to like me wanting to do sports, when I went to college, that's when like this creative side came back, and I started getting into dance a lot more. So I come from a hip hop, choreography, urban dance, and b-boy background. And then from there, I started to rap. And because of my choir experience, singing on voicemails and singing in an R&B group, when I started to rap, what I noticed is people were complimenting me on my sound, like how I sounded as a guy trying to rap. So I ran with it. And when I was in college, instead of choosing a major that was like gonna lead me towards a solid, good paying job, I decided to major in, I chose philosophy. And the reason behind taking philosophy is I wanted to train my mind to think outside of the box, right? To think in a deeper way, to look at the world in a different way. And philosophy helped me do that, and that helped me become this amazing creative writer. And for all MCs out there, all rappers, we know it comes from what you write first before you hear it on a track. So the writing skills came from, you know, me training my mind in college. When I was in college and I started to realize, oh, okay, like people are starting to f with my sound. Like, you know, they say I sound good. The things that I was saying was like weird. It was creative and clever. So that feedback and the response I got at raves, house parties where we would just cypher in the backyard, and also in like home studios where we just trying to record our vocals in a bedroom studio. All of that kind of contributed to me wanting to like pursue this. And the point where I decided I wanted to do music for a living was in college. And one thing I like to share is like one of my finals before I graduated college, I went to San Jose State University. Shout out to all the Spartans. One of my last finals was, we were supposed to write a paper, and I forgot the topic, but we were supposed to write a paper for my philosophy class. And instead of writing a paper, I wrote a monologue, and it was like me and Aristotle up in the clouds in heaven, and I rapped my final. So I told my professor, I'm sorry, I didn't write a paper, but I did this instead. So I surprised my professor with this like dialogue between me and Aristotle, and I rapped it back and forth as we were conversing about a specific subject up in the clouds. That was another big point where I'm like, okay, I'm really serious, because after college, I'm gonna go full speed ahead. That's kind of the journey up to that point where I'm like, okay, I really, really want this, you know? For those that don't know, I currently live in the Philippines. I've been out there for 5 years. But I think it was my experience prior to being in the Philippines when I lived in Korea. That's what prepared me for what came in the Philippines, because I went to a country that I had no connection to. You know, I have no Korean blood. You know, I went out there, didn't speak the language. So pushing for music in this foreign country, you know, I don't put Philippines into the same category as being foreign, because my mom and dad are Filipino, my roots are Filipino, I'm Filipino blood, right? So I come from there. That's more home than it is like moving to a place from America to Korea. So Korea, and when I say that prepped me, is because moving to the Philippines, like, even though I am Filipino, I'm always going to be looked at by the local community as an Amboy, right? And an Amboy is American boy. And that can be kind of good and bad, but mostly bad because there's this separation because we come from a country where our money is worth more, opportunities are bigger, it has more international exposure. You know, you have big sports like the NBA that's worshipped in the Philippines. You have the Hollywood scene, which is the best of the best doing what they do. Coming from a place that is so much bigger with so much more talent and so much more culture and diversity, it's almost like they look at that as, oh, okay, well, you think you're better than us, right? Like, you're not really a part of us. You come from something better than here, then you kind of think you're better than us, which is not the truth. You know, I'm not speaking for all Filipinos, but they definitely don't accept you right away, especially if you don't know how to speak Tagalog, right? So for those that don't know, Tagalog is the main language, main dialect in the Philippines. So not speaking the language fluently, automatically, even though you are Filipino, and I'm full Filipino, you know, both my mom and dad were born and raised in that country, it separates you because you're not fully a part of them, right? So now coming in as this artist, and this is what I like to talk about a lot, is when it comes to the hip hop culture, you know, you have something like breakdancing or dance. That's so universal where no matter what country you come from, you can go to that country, dance, because this doesn't involve your mouth and words, and it can be accepted. But because I rap, I'm coming from the rap MC element, this is very language-based, right? So I'm coming with, you know, deep concepts, clever lines, metaphors, similes, storytelling in a language that isn't their first language. So even though it can impact people in a country where English is has a dominant presence, going to the Philippines and performing these things, it's hard for the audience to catch on because they don't fully understand. So really, if you're trying to make yourself known or recognized, it has to come from stage presence and like the energy and then the realness and delivery of your flow. Right? So if it has like a nice little bounce to it, they can relate to that more than the message that you're trying to portray or the story that you're trying to tell. It does get tricky, and to rewind a little bit, to go back to my time in Korea, this is why when I was on stage in Korea, I had to learn the language in this way where I would learn certain catchphrases or like lines that would allow me to do a call and response. For example, I'll give you an example. I'd be like, "Sorry Jilo," right? Which in Korean means put your hands up, right? Because as I'm rapping in English in a foreign country, I can tell that they're not really getting it. So if I throw in a little bit of Korean, then now we're connected for a bit. So it's this trick of being on stage and understanding your audience where if you're gonna lose them, find a way just to bring them back, even for a short period of time, because then it'll give them a better opportunity for them to remember what you gave them for your show. So yeah, going back to the Philippines, that's the biggest disconnect, is not fully understanding the culture, the ways. You know, it is still a third world country where there's a large gap between rich and poor when it comes to their exposure to something that's a little bit different, something a little bit unique. Well, with the internet now, it's a little bit different, but I was exposed to a lot more different music than they were in that country, especially like growing up in California. I grew up watching all of my favorite acts, Erykah Badu, Outkast, Common, The Roots, you know what I mean? Like these people that inspired me as a hip hop artist, I saw live. But in the Philippines, they never got an experience to see these people that they may have been influenced by. And it's a big difference. So like to understand how to present yourself on stage, how to come with it, it's a little bit different because you weren't exposed to seeing the best of the best live, right? I'm not sure if I'm veering off the topic, but I think the biggest difference is trying to have them respect you as this foreigner, which means you have to learn to humble yourself, be patient, not be so rah, rah, rah in your face. I'm an American, I'm the best. You have to put that aside because you have to adapt to their ways, right? And that might be a hard thing to do, especially in America, where it's about putting your foot down, saying what you mean, getting that respect, because as Asian American men in America, we had to be that way in order to survive out here, you know, because we are, at the end of the day, smaller people physically and minorities. So it's learning just to adapt on that level before you focus on being respected and embraced as a musician and artist. You know what I mean? So I had to learn the hard way. You know, I've burned a lot of bridges. You know, I wasn't patient. I got triggered and got angry at people because the culture was so different. But now, after being there for so long, I understand that you have to adapt to the culture and humble yourself and learn to be a part of them first, and then build yourself up as a Filipino artist, you know? I moved around a lot when I was growing up, so I already had experience pressing that reset button and making new friends, not knowing anybody. English was something that was like, oh, okay, well, I think I could teach this subject pretty well to the kids, you know? So when I went out there, I think Korea is a big highlight in my journey because that's the first time that I was able to say I could live off of music, right? Where, you know, sponsorships came, being on big time TV shows, on the magazine covers, like a little billboard on the bus station, and touring, being on a bus and going from city to city and touring and getting that whole experience of feeling like a rock star. I was able to do that in Korea, and it's such a unique experience because it wasn't in my home country, right? But I think that's what also allowed me to like really push harder than I should, is because I went out there not knowing anybody. So I'm like, how do I build myself up in a country that doesn't speak English for their first language as an English hip hop artist, right? So universe kind of aligned itself, all these opportunities came, met the right people, and was able to, you know, have these amazing memories and a part of my resume for life. So I think that experience in Korea really, really jumped it off for me, and it solidified what I had in my head of, I want to be an entertainer full time, right? So the special thing about Las Vegas, Nevada for me is, number one, since I am living in Southeast Asia in the Philippines, I barely get to see my family. And the reason why I'm in Vegas right now is because my mom and dad retired and decided, out of all places, to buy a house in Las Vegas, Nevada. Number one, the purpose of me being in this city is great because I get to be around mom and dad, right, who I don't get to see most of the year. Being here and taking in their energy, I think has definitely put me in a lot of good places, you know, and I've met amazing people in Las Vegas and a group of people that I consider family. And the reason why it's been so special is, number one, I gravitated towards people I naturally just want to be around. And luckily, I'm fortunate that they're like all creatives, right? And I love being around creatives, whether you're a photographer, or director, or designer, you know, singer, rapper, producer. I'm meeting a group of creatives out here. So, and it's also unique to just see, you know, I think Las Vegas is so unique. It's like one of the unique places in the United States because you have your everyday local life with a major tourist spot, the Las Vegas Strip, that's there for you at any time, that runs 24/7. So in the world of music and entertainment, you have some of the biggest names, Bruno Mars, you know, Usher, Beyonce, like people are here regularly on a daily basis on the Strip. So to have the local creative culture and then this Las Vegas tourist strip culture and how that kind of fuses, it makes Las Vegas a very unique place. I don't know any other place in the United States like it. You know, not even New York or a place like Los Angeles where Hollywood is. I've been on stage a lot here. I've been able to leave my mark and been in wonderful studios, recorded many songs. Like I said, I blessed the stage many times. You know, at the end of the day, the most important is I met people here that I consider my new family. So when I come back from the Philippines and I visit my parents again, I have a whole squad out here that got my back. So I appreciate all you. When COVID hit, I was living in the Philippines. I created 2 albums in the span of 1 year and put them out in the span of 1 year. The first album is Baduy. Find that anywhere, B-A-D-U-Y. Second one is SSB. Find that anywhere too. So the upcoming project that I have that's already done, you know, I work like a machine when it comes to music, and I'm happy I got to this place. But this project that's coming out in the next couple of months is my new album. This is my 3rd album, and it's called Parallel Universe. It's a 10-track album. This album is super special because, number one, I worked with a producer for all of the songs who I met during my Korea days. So he's from Seoul, South Korea. Producer's name's J-Path. Shout out to J-Path. He was creating music in Korea, sent over the beats. I wrote and recorded everything in the Philippines at my family and home studio, Mango Room. Shout out to the team at Mango Room out in Pasig, Capitolio. But I wrote and recorded everything in the Philippines, and we brought it together. And now we have this complete body of work. The reason why I'm excited for Parallel Universe is because it shows my versatility. So it goes from me having high-pitched voices, low-pitched voices, singing, rapping, and the quality of my storytelling and rhymes is a good example of how far I've come. And yeah, I'm excited for you guys to hear that. So that's coming out in February 2022. Another project that I have is my first time sharing it is I am switching my energy because I have so much music made, right? I have albums made already that haven't been out. So I'm redirecting my energy to writing screenplays. So I'm taking my writing skills, and instead of writing music, I'm gonna tap into the movie world. And so when I get back to the Philippines, I'm gonna work on my very first screenplay and gonna go that route and see where that takes me. But very excited for that because not only am I putting music out for you guys, now I'm gonna tap into the writing side of the movie world. Find me anywhere. You can Google search me. It's February, like the month, and bank. February, just to explain this, I'm an Aquarius, February birthday. My birthday's on February 5th. Bank is actually an acronym for, it's not like money in the bank, it's an acronym for Because Aliens Never Knew. And the whole concept of Because Aliens Never Knew is the aliens that are up there in outer space didn't know that down here on Earth we're also aliens too. So Because Aliens Never Knew, February bank, find anywhere, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, yeah, anywhere that you want to search that name, I'm sure you'll find something. So shout out to all the people out there that will take the time, and to my fans and supporters all around the world. Love y'all so much.